Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the #1 source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
I was wrong for ever saying Lobstradamus was gone because you predicted exactly that Detroit would go 1-1-1 this weekend. And I think we even went so far as to say they would lose to Buffalo, the Atlantic rival, and take points off the better teams in New Jersey and Edmonton.
You're very close to accurate. We didn't say they'd lose to Buffalo because they're the Atlantic rival. We said they'd lose to Buffalo because they're the only bad team of those three.
Evan, aside from being born with a horseshoe shoved up your rear end, what's it like to have the gift of prophecy?
It's bizarre. Maybe the Red Wings are too predictable, and I think a lot of people would say you're absolutely correct. But this one was too obvious.
We were watching in my living room when they went to overtime, and then you two just started chuckling because you were like, we know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's also affected by the fact that the other team has McDavid, Draisaitl, etc., and that's what you saw in overtime. Like, it's almost excusable, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, Evan.
What are you going to do?
Evan Lobstradamus Lobsinger predicted this, and thus that's how it was meant to be. Folks, welcome to this very late night edition of the Winged Wheel Podcast. You can call us a lot of things. But don't say we're not dedicated, because it is. In like 5 minutes, it's going to be literally past Evan's bedtime.
We're close. We're very close.
Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to talk to you about the three Red Wings games that have happened since the last time we spoke. Michael Rasmussen dropped Jack Hughes, it seems like a century ago, but we still haven't talked about it on the podcast. We'll talk about the Devils game, the Sabres game, and the Edmonton Oilers game that just ended just now. All the takeaways from that, the lineups, the ups, the downs, the scrappy wins, the better period that you saw against Edmonton, the tough looks that you saw against Buffalo, all that and lots more. Red Wings prospects from Grand Rapids to Sweden to Finland are all lighting it up. Grand Rapids off to a hot start. Amadeus Lombardi leading the way. Carter Gylander getting a look. Injury updates on Carter Mazur, Ville Husso, etc. Axel Sandin Pellikka continuing to have Red Wings fans clamoring to have him in Detroit right now. Kiiskinen over in Finland, who is doing so well, they gave him a gold helmet, which I think is sweet, and we'll be talking more about that. More in the Red Wings organization before we jump into NHL news. Tkachuk being Tkachuk, standings updates, and I will irritate Brad with some hypotheticals before we jump into overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know two things. First, pay attention to our Twitter tomorrow at Winged Wheel Pod. Give us a follow. There's some news coming, and that's as much as I'll tell you right now. So on Monday, by Monday afternoon, you'll see some news announced that I think some folks will be excited to hear. Additionally, we have revamped our Winged Wheel Podcast Patreon. Brand new updates to all of the tiers to make things bigger and better. In case you haven't seen, we just sent a massive shipment of Winged Wheel Podcast and Winged Wheel Podcast and Detroit Red Wings co-branded merch out to our Winged Wheel Podcast patrons. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. You get benefits like the giveaways that I just told you about. You also get access to all of our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones, and any other bonus content that we put out there. You also get access to our Winged Wheel Podcast exclusive Discord. In addition to that, you're automatically entered to all of our giveaways. For example, we're giving away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, the vast majority going directly to our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Let's start with the Devils game, and I know we want to start from the beginning here, but why don't we state the obvious? Michael Rasmussen standing over Jack Hughes, celebrating in his face, screaming with his patented Rasmussen crazy eyes, might be the moment of the season, and it was before the season feels like it even really started.
I'll start by saying that I appreciate that Jack Hughes had the, we'll call it, courage to think that he could run through Michael Rasmussen. He did not quite have the intelligence to understand what was about to happen to him, because There has got to be no worse way to lose a game. You get scored on to seal a game that you definitely should have won, but now are definitely not going to. Get planted on your ass, and then the guy just sellies right over top of you, staring right through you the whole time. It's a tough look.
There's nothing worse than that.
Do you think Jack Hughes was, because that was a heated game, that was a very chippy game, do you think he was committed to trying to run Rasmussen, and then as he got close went, oh, man, this guy's tall. I thought this was just a perspective thing, but he's only getting taller. I got to bail out of this.
No, you know how hockey players are. He made up his mind he was running him at the red line, and not one thought crossed his mind about not going through with it.
It wasn't even hard for, like, Rasmussen, it's not like he buried the goal, the empty net goal to seal the game, and then, like, really braced and had a split second. He kind of just continued his motion and looked over, and Hughes bounced off of him.
I genuinely think Rasmussen didn't know he was there. Like, watch his eyes on the play. He does not look over. I'm sure he probably caught some movement out of his peripheral, but given what you just said, where he did not brace at all, leads me to believe he didn't know there was a hit coming, or he realized it was Hughes and went, well, this guy doesn't check. I don't have to worry about this.
Well, the Red Wings won 5-3, and that was partly because of Rasmussen sealing the game. But it wasn't a perfect game for the Red Wings, but something that you and I both said post-game, Brad, was that the Red Wings had life this game. They looked like they gave a damn, and it was against a strong team, a talented team. Jack Hughes is one of those Tage Thompson types, and I say that for a reason, who seems to have Detroit's number, but it was a scrappy game where Detroit found a way. They went down 1-0 off a Nico Hischier goal, but then Christian Fischer picked up a rebound in front, very patiently put it in, and then Alex DeBrincat off of a great play. It was a turnover, really smart play at the blue line. It was almost overlooked, but the puck was crossing the blue line, and he saw his teammate trying to get onside, pull the puck back in a split second to keep the play onside, went in and fired it home. And the Red Wings walked into the second period with a 2-1 lead. And that was, it was a good turnaround, even though they had won the game prior. Like, this was off of a 2-game win streak going against the Devils. Heavily outshot this game 2-1. It was a 40-20 total by the end. But Detroit, those were just some indications that they were finding those moments to step in there.
The biggest criticism I think most people had, including myself, of the Red Wings going into that game was it wasn't just that they were playing bad. They were playing lifeless. Like, you could just see the lack of motivation. I think we called it on Twitter the give a shit meter. It was at an all-time low. And yeah, they squeaked out some wins, largely on the backs of goaltending. The Red Wings did not play well that game. They were definitely outclassed by the Devils, but we saw the give a damn. So I'm like, all right, if that had to be step one to getting back on track to being a good hockey team. So I'm glad we saw that, and then you can make progressions from there. So that was by no means a good game. That was by no means a masterpiece, but the most important element in the game of hockey that they were missing, they found that game. And then they did just enough with some good goaltending and some timely goal scoring, which was the formula we all said was going to have to be the formula for them to win games this year, came through.
The goal scoring continued in the third period for Detroit as Dylan Larkin took a shot pass from Kane. He redirected that puck in on the power play. Kane really seems to be ramping up his game. 5-on-5 is still a question, but on the power play, he shone in this game. That put the Red Wings at 3-2. He sure tied the game 3-3, and then Patrick Kane on the power play with a late goal. Very big, Showtime vibes. Stepping in, seems like it was that Kane moment to seal the game, and that's what it ended up being. And of course, Michael Rasmussen, as we mentioned, sealed it. His first goal of the season, empty net goal. I believe the 50th of his career. No one's really thinking about that. They're thinking about the moment over Jack Hughes. So Detroit wins 5-3. Heavily outshot again. A lot of the same kind of concerns that we've been talking about that were baked into the roster, but fewer of the concerns that we said were about, how the Red Wings were executing this game. Not perfect. As Brad said, it still came with its warts, but they gave a damn this game. And the Red Wings showed up, especially in front of a very excited, rabid LCA crowd. Like, that was a good show. And that's the kind of 5-3 win that the Red Wings can be proud of, even though it's not the kind of 5-3 win you want to see long term, especially as this team gets better over the season and seasons to come. So all in all, you have to be happy with that result. And that was 3 straight wins for Detroit.
Yeah, the Red Wings have to be the analytics busters again this year to be successful. Again, not going to repeat all the exacts that have to follow for that to happen. All they can control with the roster they have is their effort and their execution. They get up against like a team like New Jersey. We'll talk about Edmonton a bit. There's only so much they can do. If those two teams are on their game, Detroit can't beat them. Like they just do not have the horses to beat them if everybody's firing at 100%. But when you catch the Devils on a night where they're being undisciplined, where they're easily thrown off the game with physical play, couple scraps, couple scrums, I'm sure more than a little trash talk. Yeah, you got to jump on those opportunities because they're not going to come up all the time when you play a team like that. So it was good they capitalized.
There's a lot for Everton in this game too, because there was the scrap between Fisher and was it Dylan, and then there was the Larkin throwing a pretty obvious elbow into Cotter's face after he laid a big hit on Raymond just previous, left Cotter bloodied, and there like essentially there's stuff brewing the whole game until the eventual. It was leading up to this, the Hamilton Ontario Bowl between Chiarot and Kovacevic, where after a scrum had broken out, I think Meyer was going after Raymond and Larkin was getting a ton of attention. Chiarot was like, screw this, I'm going after this guy, and they scrapped too. It was a pretty raucous game.
I love it. And like you guys said, now we've seen some emotion attached to this team. It felt like they were trending in the right direction. Was the penalty kill good? Absolutely not.
Oh, God.
Is their 5-on-5 game good? Absolutely not. But it was great to see, and the fans got a lot of entertainment for their money that night.
And I fully agree with what you said, Brad. Like, this team has to be a model buster. They have to be an analytics buster. Even if the Red Wings fix their execution, there's going to be a lot of conversation, especially as we get after the Buffalo game here. But even if the Red Wings fix execution, they're not going to be a team that is going to most nights outshoot their opponents. They're just not built for that. Even if the offense is clicking, their defense is bad, period. Edvinsson is having himself a great season, and he's getting better every game on average. Moritz Seider, when he has bad games, still is probably Detroit's best defenseman on average. Behind that, you're randomly cycling out whichever guy is this week's reclamation project when we are celebrating how good he is, but really it's just that he's getting back to serviceable. Like,
you can just say the Justin Hall Renaissance.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the defense is always going to be the defense, and on a random night where your goalies are cold, you're just not going to get that kind of support. But it doesn't have to be as bad as 40-20. Ironically, they won that game, but still. The next game, Buffalo on the road, and it's going to be a crucial one. Any divisional game is going to be a crucial one, and I think, it's tough to go into another team's barn and say you're going to expect to win. Buffalo's a talented team on paper. Have they been a talented team in the standings? No. Are they helped by those sweet black, white, and red goat head jerseys? Oh my God. Those are so good, man.
When you factor in home, away, and alternate, Buffalo might be
at the top.
They might be at the top of that list because
they're top tier for sure.
The Blues and their whites are elite, and then the goat heads might be even better,
especially as they do the gold trim as well for all their so good. Anyhow, so the Buffalo game, I thought Detroit had moments. I thought especially the first 20 minutes were rough. The first 20 minutes were bad. I felt like you turned the game on and they were already being outshot 14-5 or something. It feels like that's how the game started. They just didn't start on time. And that's not new. We've been talking about this for a long time with the Red Wings, and they walked away from the first period down 2-1, and that was lucky. Like, they had to have been glad to be down 2-1 because that first period was, all the excitement of Michael Rasmussen standing over Jack Hughes, and hopefully the Red Wings use this as a galvanizing moment. And, they're not going to overcome their roster deficiencies every game, but they can execute a bit better. It didn't start out that way. That first period was a tough watch. It was DeBrincat scoring off of really great work down low from Raymond up to DeBrincat, pass to Seider, Seider back to DeBrincat for the goal. But other than that first period was, well,
sometimes you don't need analytics. Sometimes you don't need a coherent thought process. After that Rasmussen moment, following it up with that period, I was just angry. Just kind of one of those, how the hell can you carry all that momentum at the end of a game? And I know game-to-game momentum's largely a myth, but the give a damn level was at an all-time high for this season on Thursday night, and the very last moments of the game were when it was at its absolute highest. And then you show up to Buffalo, and hey, I love Buffalo, not the team, the city. The Red Wings have had a tough schedule this year. You get blasted by the Rangers, you put up a couple stinkers but lucky results against the Predators. The Islanders are never a pushover. Like, you had a tough schedule. The Devils obviously are the Devils. Tough test. This was like the first game where you're looking going, if you ever expect the Red Wings to win a game, this is probably the one you're circling on the calendar early in the season going, you need to win that one.
I didn't.
We know. That's my ultimate point is this team is painfully predictable.
Not all of us are born with the gift of prophecy. In case any of you are wondering how Evan became how many times are you a billionaire?
I cannot disclose that information.
It's probably because of, you just understand how current events are going to unfold and you go to the betting markets with that.
Have you heard of this company is publicly traded? It's called Apple.
No. You don't own any Apple products.
No, I don't.
It makes it so annoying for group chats. Anyhow, so Brad's saying all this and I thought, God, they have to come out and have a good second. And I thought they did. I thought at points in the second period, Tage Thompson did Tage Thompson things right away, and that was annoying. That was his second goal of the game. It's actually a small miracle that he didn't get the empty net hat trick because he's a Red Wings killer. But I thought, okay, 3-1, they have to show up. Michael Rasmussen cleans up a rebound in front off a Moritz Seider shot. Edvinsson on the secondary assist. And then Lucas Raymond scores his first goal of the year. Raymond, who I think no Red Wing has been perfect, but Raymond, who I think has been Detroit's probably on average best forward, just kind of seems to be a little snake bitten, fallen into a little bit too much of his habits of hanging on the puck too long. Broke free, forced a turnover on the penalty kill, and Raymond is an all situations player now, in case you hadn't noticed. Goes down the ice, fires home his first goal of the year, his first career shorthanded goal, and ties the game for Detroit. And I thought, yes, this is it. They're starting to turn it around. They're starting to find those moments where, analytically speaking, statistically speaking, you can't rely on this game in and game out, but your best players are doing this stuff. Yeah, Bowen Byram scored with about 5 minutes left in the third period was nothing other than the Jack Quinn empty net goal. Detroit they were flat in the third, and it was like, I actually was thinking to myself, is this flu that's going around the explanation here? And I hate thinking that because it feels like an excuse. Who was it? Was it Left Wing Lock that tweeted out JT Compher is out with diarrhea? I was like, that's not, call it illness, man. The poor guy.
What's the one screen cap meme that's been floating around a lot lately? We should know less about each other.
Everyone should be online a lot less. Yeah, we should all know way less about each other.
Yeah. To be fair, it was pretty symbolic of that game overall.
And I thought, is that part of the execution? Because there's still guys in the Red Wings where they look sluggish, where I'm like, these aren't bad players in the way that we're seeing it. It's just not explained by, all of a sudden they've regressed. No, that does not make sense for where they are in their careers. People are up in arms about, whatever 6th, 7th defenseman or third or fourth line forward. And that's all very fair. But you're like, what's with the slow starts? What's with the sluggishness? What's with the terrible execution? You can't play 60 minutes. It's not really a brand new thing for the Red Wings, but to this degree, it didn't make sense. After the Buffalo game, I was like, what's the explanation here?
I've got one for Rasmussen. I think someone posted online. Him and his wife had a child in September, so he's got a 2-month-old at home. That man is not sleeping. So I understand why he's had a sluggish start to the season, but everybody else, they're either sick or need to be kicked pretty hard. Not Bill Peters style, but you know what I mean.
Oh my God.
I didn't say it.
I'll leave that in. That's fine. It's after dark.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's, again, to quote Lobsterdamus here, painfully predictable how that game was going to go. And even when you said they had a good second period, you had to use the qualifier at points, which in and of itself is the problem. You see it in glimpses, and all we've talked about so far this season is how long are those windows. Sometimes there's 0 windows in a game. Sometimes those windows are only 10 minutes of a 60-minute game. Preview for the Edmonton game coming up, it was 30 minutes of that game. Like, at points, we can see what this team was last year, but those points are way too far and way too few between.
Maybe the Red Wings are just tired from playing too many preseason games. I highly doubt that's the case, but...
No. You know what? Run with it, because maybe this is our petition to get them to start lessening them.
Yeah, honestly.
Best we can do is an 84, 86 game season then. That's the best we can do.
No, you're pissing me off. It's too late.
I'm sorry. You know what? When we're talking about moments of performance and moments of momentum, a lot of it lands on the players. They're professionals playing a professional sports. You got to be ready and get up for the games, but the coaching staff has to put them in the right position too. I know I mentioned earlier the penalty kill hasn't been great lately. A lot of that falls on coaching, and they have to lay on some of the blame as well.
Absolutely. And that's one of the resounding kind of notions around the fan base, especially after losses right now. And I want to qualify this next conversation by saying this was one loss after a 3-game win streak. And I tweeted out something similar. That in and of itself is not worth the panic. So, if you're sitting here saying, how is there going to be this much complaint about one loss? Sounds silly, but it's not really about the results. It's about how, because the 3-game win streak and all the games before, like going into the Edmonton game, Detroit's 500. And that seemed like something fortunate. That's a little silver lining to the position they're in right now with their lackluster play, because if they turn this around, there's not so big of a hole to dig out of. You didn't start off 0-8 or anything. But, this resounding kind of notion going around is, how do you explain this poor start? Yeah, some of it does fall on coaching, and it's the preparedness. I still maintain, because to call, what's out there, if people are going to be calling for Lalonde's job, it still drives me nuts how much of a hand he has tied behind his back with his roster, because I think at best what you can hope for is a turnaround at the forwards, because this defense is what it is. I'm sorry, even if this defense was so prepared and dialed every game, at best you're getting average through defensemen 1 through 6, or if they're running 11-7, 1 through 7. It's just not that defense. Gustafsson has been, for the start of the season, I'm sorry to say it, a failure so far. Could turn around. I would love to see that happen. He was a good player in other places, and so maybe that happens, but this defense is not a good defense. So yeah, if we're going to be entertaining this conversation, that's well and good, but it stretches to me from how much of this falls on the coaching staff, and then the bigger conversation, which isn't so immediate as to how do you fix, this season or whatever, is the front office. But yeah, the explanation for how this team is showing up and the deficiencies based on how good they are, some of it does have to fall on the players and execution, and some of it on the coaching staff to put them in that position. You're totally right, Evan.
Yeah, and I see the takes online of, they're 4-4-1. They're a 500 team. Why all the doomer talk? Why are you always so upset? We're 500. We've won as many as we've lost. And to me, that's just such a lazy take, because we're sitting here 9 games in, and I think we can pretty comfortably say the Red Wings have been outplayed in 9 games. Like, they are.
I'll give them a couple games.
The one Nashville game, I will give a coin flip. You can sway me to either side of that. Every other game, there is no room for debate. They have been outplayed substantially.
There's no time for debate. It's nearly midnight.
Like, what was the one? Fair. What was the one stat Prashanth was showing us in the group chat? They were getting outshot by 10 plus on average per game, which was historically bad.
Going into tonight, I'll read out the stats for you.
It's crazy how bad it was.
Going into tonight, the Red Wings were 24.6 shots per game. League worst. Tied for league worst, 35.0 shots against per game. That's going into the Edmonton game. That differential of 10.4 shots, it's not like shots don't always equal goals, and we have to recognize that. Shots don't equal wins. But at the extremes, like that overall, you map it out, we saw the chart, it does trend in that direction where the shot differential is going to lead to better results. And at the extremes is where you should be concerned. And the Red Wings are at an extreme right now. I don't think this will hold all season because, again, it just doesn't make sense in my brain. But if it does, they are in trouble because this is an extreme result. And even tonight, the Red Wings started out well. We'll talk about the Oilers game, but they started out great in the first period, but they still ended up outshot 34-26. That 8-shot margin was better than their average. So that actually brought them to be a little bit better. And that's a good thing, but also a bad thing, you know?
Yeah, because the whole conversation this early in the season, hockey is a very random sport. And when you get players early in the season, rusty, you know, some teams have new coaches, new players, everybody's trying to figure out a lot of things, it's going to be pretty chaotic hockey. But when the should you have won this game meter is 0 for 9, the process is bad.
When I'm arguing for maybe it's 1 for 9 or 2 for 9, it's bad.
Yeah, if your argument is you can sway me to 1 and 8, okay, that's also terrible. So yeah, we all should be happy they're 4-4-1 because that is unbelievably lucky.
Thank you, Alex Lyon, Cam Talbot.
Yeah, and we should be grateful they're 4-4-1. I'm not saying anybody should look at that and pout and go, it's not a real 4-4-1. No, that's the record. They banked those points. So if they get their crap together, those are free points that they probably shouldn't have had. It's a terrific thing, but it also highlights this team has so many problems. The forwards, we can rip apart. The defense, you just did rip apart. The coaching, we can rip apart. The only position that I would say is blameless right now is goaltending. Which, funny enough, the most unpredictable position in the sport, but here we are.
Yeah. It does have to change. You know, we talk a lot about the Red Wings rebuild and what's the long-term trajectory, and you look at these contracts and, you know, Brad, I especially know you're big on that. You're huge on it, and it is like this overarching conversation that we can't do for, you know, 100 episodes a year, twice a week, but we do bring it up often because it does matter, because right now the Red Wings aren't in a cup competitive window. The Red Wings' goal this season is to make the playoffs. The Red Wings' goal this season, realistically speaking, is not to win the cup. It would take a miracle. It would take an honest miracle. So you just have to take that step. And whether or not you agree with that goal is immaterial to the bigger problem that is, you know, short-term right now. This team is not performing to the standard they should be at. They are not. Is this affecting their 3-year window, 5-year window? No, this is a whole different story. But right now, based on the team that's been put together, it shouldn't be this bad. This is not sustainable. They can't go into Thanksgiving like this. They can't go into the Christmas break like this. They can't go and this needs to change. Otherwise, changes will come.
So I guess for me, it depends what Red Wings camp you land in. Are you a fan and you just sort of say, I want them to be as good as they possibly can and don't care about the nuance and all that. You're 4-4-1. You're probably like, this team looks really bad, but we're 4-4-1. That's okay. If you fall into the camp where it's like, oh, Seider looks good. Simon Edvinsson is looking good in his young career. Lucas Raymond, yeah, he's been snake bitten, but we know he can bring it to another level. Dylan Larkin is Dylan Larkin. You know, you probably have a different outlook on how this season should play out compared to the other camp.
Yeah, sure, but the Red Wings weren't positioning themselves to tank this year.
That's a whole different sort of conversation. If you care about, I can talk about either of those camps. If the message is this is going to be a playoff team, then I've got very strong concerns. But if I, as a fan watching the games, and I'm more so caring about the future years, regardless if the team thinks they're a playoff team, then that's completely different for me.
Okay, but fans, I think I'm going to be an Evan Lopsinger here.
No, thank you.
I'm going to be a fence sitter, and I'm in both camps because I am tired of watching bad Red Wings hockey.
100%.
Everybody in Hockeytown is, and there were points, especially all three of us at different points, where like, yeah, I care more about the rebuild because we're coming off of, you know, the Holland era, the bad contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Enough has happened where I think this team, based on the steps they've taken, should be better than they are now. And I am still more like, if you ask me to say, you know,
but look at the
gun to the earth, which one are you picking? The future versus this season? Of course I'm picking the future because they're not winning the cup this season, but it doesn't mean I like what's happening now.
I would say the steps that they have taken haven't made them a better hockey team.
It's made them better than what they were at the bottom of the rebuild.
Yeah, but compared to last year, I think this roster is weaker. But the key difference in this roster, and I'm glad Evan alluded to it, is this team largely looks bad. Do you know the list of players who have impressed me? Simon Edvinsson. That feels pretty important. Marco Kasper. That feels pretty important. Surprisingly, Jonathan Berggren.
Yeah,
that
he had a
feels
good game
pretty,
today.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's showing up more than some other guys. Andrew Copp. That's just a good story.
Justin Hall.
Well,
he was helpful.
This is a different basket,
Yeah.
but
But-
still.
yeah. And
Andrew
then-
Copp, though, like really Andrew Copp.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then Raymond looks good. Seider looks good. The guys that actually matter, and like with all due respect to a lot of these veterans, the guys that actually matter on this roster are the guys who look the best of the group. And then there's Andrew Copp, who that's just a feel good story. And I hope, because I had concerns, and I know I was even in the group chat in the preseason, he looked horrendous. And then all of a sudden he just comes out hair on fire in the season.
He's not a preseason guy.
I love it.
He wants less.
Neither are we.
Yeah.
He's in the same camp
Short
as
and
us.
preseason. So yeah, I'm in the same boat as Evan. The making the playoffs this year, oh boy, am I concerned. But hey, what about Berggren, Kasper, Edvinsson for the window? All signs are pretty positive right now.
More.
I totally get what you say, though, Ryan, about you just are tired of watching a middling to bad team.
Yeah.
And I think more people probably feel that way than Brad and I do about thinking about prospects and the future. I think more people are just interested in the now. They want to see a team win. And when they don't, they tune out.
Yeah, don't care how good Simon Edvinsson looked tonight because all I see is a big fat 3-goal loss or something like that. Yeah, and that's how every casual hockey fan on the planet is going to look at it, which is most of the people watching the game on the TV. You have the diehards who are listening to this and following along on Twitter. Like, you have to understand that's a fraction of the viewership. So It is understandable that the impatience, and don't get me wrong, I'm with Ryan on this. Holy hell. If this team hits the cliff that looks like is coming, the amount of rage that will be emanating from my body at all points of the day.
It'll be a good episode.
Episodes, like, I'm hoping they get it together, but yeah, because I'm with Ryan. I don't care about, okay, yeah, Marco Kasper had an assist, Edvinsson had an assist, Lucas Raymond had 2 goals, and the Red Wings lost by 3. I'm still going to be angry at the end of that game.
One more stat to kind of tie in my point here. This is from JFresh, I think it was. 5-on-5 expected goals per 60. Detroit's at 1.77, league worst as well. And so my big point is, like, I agree with you guys again. I'm being a proud fence sitter here. I understand and I agree. Like, it is phenomenal that Simon Edvinsson is showing this kind of progress. I love that Kasper's in this lineup and we're not talking about him going down, et cetera, et cetera. But still, like, it shouldn't be this bad. It's like the inverse of the standings. Like, on paper, this team should be better than how they're executing, but the way they're executing, they should have way fewer points than what they have now. It's this weird, like, it's just not adding up. And it's so poignant, it's so loud and in your face that it pulls you out of that long-term rebuild discussion. And so that's my point, and I think that's what the fan base is very fairly pointing out. I do want to get to the Oilers game to cover that, because I think the first period against the Oilers, the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ekholm, Bouchard Oilers, Detroit was fantastic in the first period. I thought it was the best period of hockey they played. JT Compher scored. Detroit walked away from the first period with 1-0 lead. Beautiful play by Patrick Kane on that quick one-touch back pass, and Copp with the good work down low to kick it over to him initially.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't you skim past Andrew Copp on that one.
No. You are now, like, this is how you know hell has frozen over. We are now in a new timeline. Like, Brad is the biggest Andrew Copp stan there is.
I love a good redemption story.
And
because I got to be fair to the guy. I don't think there was anybody harder on him last year than me. So when he's showing up and playing well, I'm not going to sit here and go, well, I thought he was bad, so I'm going to still say he's bad. No, dude's playing great.
Red Wings admin, if you don't mind just saving extra medium Andrew Copp jersey for whatever the Stadium Series jersey is, that one we'll give to Brad.
I'm only accepting it if it's autographed.
Look at this guy, eh? What a grifter.
Jeez. That's classic Brad.
Jeez.
That's the difference between old money and new money, right?
Hey,
there.
he had to get free tickets from Steve Ott here. Come on now.
That's right.
And he didn't even get them.
I know.
Little Winged Wheel podcast.
I hope
for
they
you.
send you an extra medium, but in youth.
Well, it would be he'd be swimming in that.
Be
You have to give it to
I was going to say, you think Hank wouldn't be over the moon with that?
Yeah. And then speaking of Andrew Copp, he is the one who quickly regained the lead in the second period. Leon Draisaitl scored, and then like 40 seconds later, Andrew Copp tipped in a Jeff Petrie point shot. Kane also getting the assist there. And again, after 2 periods, the second was where you saw a lot more of the Edmonton Oilers being the Edmonton Oilers roster versus the Red Wings roster, but still the Red Wings were hanging in there, and through 2 periods.
Second half of the period, the Red Wings got their mojo back a little bit. First 10 minutes were, that was Edmonton going, oh, right, we're playing Detroit.
And, it was a fun game because not only was Detroit playing well, they had a new look lineup where, actually credit to Max Bultman. He both wrote about it, and on his most recent appearance on the Winged Wheel podcast in Good in the Room, he even said this, like, this is the lineup that we should be doing. It was a second line of Copp, Compher, Kane, and they were thriving all night. And Kasper had Berggren and Tarasenko on his wings, which was a fun look for him. And like between that and then Joe Veleno bringing in shades of Pavel Datsyuk and punching Corey Perry in the face, like great night. And even in the end, like Bouchard scored 10 minutes into the third around there, went to overtime, and then it was almost automatic McDavid, Ekholm, Draisaitl, backdoor, past Edvinsson, Seider was chasing. Oilers won in OT, but you're almost less, that loss didn't feel so bad. It's not good. It's not good to lose the game. It's not good to lose the game after leading through 2 periods. But that to me felt like, Edmonton's just a better team on paper. That felt like it played out how it should have played out.
You know what the Edmonton Oilers are not? The Buffalo Sabres. So you do feel a different kind of way afterwards.
That effort against the Sabres gets the win.
Oh, 100%. And because I can look at this game and go, I can find 30 minutes of this game where the Red Wings were the better team, which, again, is not something I could have said about any game to this point in the season. And the fact that it was the Edmonton Oilers is great. Now, again, they're the Oilers. So when you factor in when they turned it on, how much they were outperforming the Red Wings, and then overtime, the scales aren't equal. But when it's the Oilers versus the Red Wings, I don't expect them to be equal. So, upset they lost in overtime. Couple plays they probably want back. By and large, I can look at that game and go, there was enough positives there. I don't need to flip a table right now.
Raymond looked like he was hurt, but he came back in, which was good. I thought Edvinsson's not perfect every game. Like I think I see a lot of, Edvinsson will have a rookie game and he'll be making his mistakes. And I see a lot of, I don't want to say complaints, but people are pointing out and saying, oh, I thought Edvinsson was a savior. I want to caution people. Edvinsson's going to have his warts. Defensemen who are coming into this league, look at your favorite defenseman that's not a Red Wing, Dahlin, Hedman, etc. Look at their early careers.
People were thinking Hedman would get traded out of Tampa at one point.
That one still drives me nuts because I was banging the table for that. But
Sir, I got to get to the beginning of why you're bringing this up. Were people saying Edvinsson was bad tonight?
No,
I was going to say, because we weren't watching the same game then. He was great
He was great tonight, which I thought was a great bounce back compared to Buffalo. And it's going to be that up and down, but the fact that you see so many ups, like Albert Johansson got back in the roster tonight after being out for however many days, and people were losing their minds, I think fairly. I think, Hall came out and Gustafson came out, and you can close your eyes and pick any 2 Red Wings defensemen that aren't Seider, Edvinsson, and probably Chiarot and be justified in pulling them out based on their impact on the ice. Edvinsson is having way more good games than a player of his experience you would expect. So he's going to have his sucky games. He's going to have his rookie games. He's going to have his games where he makes stupid mistakes or gets burned, but he is doing well you have to look at him over a measure.
And he's starting to get his confidence in the offensive zone, which is exciting. Because we knew he could defend with size, reach, positioning, skating. Like, you knew that was going to translate well to the NHL in all likelihood. We knew he had puck skills and a bit of offensive flair, but in his first couple previews with the Red Wings, didn't really see it. You could tell he was just trying to play simple, risk-free hockey and not doing a whole hell of a lot when the puck was on his stick in the O-zone. Oh, he has had some sequences now where he's just like, all right, we're going. And he'll do some, I don't know how else to describe it. He'll just do some cool shit. And it's great to watch when he does it because, 1, it's cool shit. And 2, it's good to know he's, at the point where he's confident enough to try it.
All this to say, the Red Wings lost. And here we are. They're 4-4-1. alongside the Buffalo Sabres, Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, and Boston Bruins. We'll see how the Senators do tonight. But like they are still in the thick of everything. It's not like things are lost through 9 games. They are not the San Jose Sharks who are 0-7-2.
Oh my God.
They are not like a prolifically bad team by results. But by the margins, by the performances on ice, if they didn't have this Edmonton game, I would be way more concerned. And the concern's not gone. I mean what I said earlier. Like they need to keep trending in this direction. This Edmonton game, it's an OT loss. They got 1 point. They lost the lead in the third period and they lost the game. That is not a good thing. I'm not going to sugarcoat this and say it's a good thing. But it was still trending in the right direction. That's how bad the play was up until that point.
Yeah, hopefully next game they can, get a weaker team and not like the last undefeated team in the NHL or anything like that. A good bounce back,
The 8-0 Winnipeg Jets are coming to town on Wednesday. And on Halloween, you're going to hear an episode that is spooky for one reason or another. I'll tell you that much. Still, up until this point, man, the Red Wings have been, of all the ways this year could have started, if you said it was good, I'd say it's because the forwards were scoring like they were last year. And if you would tell me it was bad, I would say it's because the goalies sucked and the defense sucked. I would not have picked this combination of things to kind of give you the Larry David.
We did spend the whole offseason pointing out with the offense that the warning signals on the dashboard were lighting up.
Yes.
We were hoping they'd be the analytics busters, but the warning signs were there. And so far early this year, the warning signs were there for a reason. But they still seem to be producing more than the analytics say they should. So there could be something there that, yeah, maybe they are a bit of that. The numbers don't fully justify what they're doing.
I maintain what I say. There's not a big hole to climb out of. You are not going to get help from your defense. Unless Steve Yzerman makes a move and brings in Rasmus Andersson or something like this, defense is what they are. And Edvinsson's going to get better, and that's going to make things better for Detroit. Not enough to fix things. Albert Johansson could continue to get better, and that could make things better for Detroit, but not by enough to fix things. It has to be the forwards. It has to be showing up on times to games. And it has to be continuing to get solid goaltending, and holy hell is that risky business.
If I had told you at the start of the year that through 9 games, the Red Wings would have the same record as Boston and Toronto, would you have taken it?
10 times out of 10.
Okay, well, they do.
25 times out of 10. This is all this weird twilight zone where I think I sound stupid for either complaining or celebrating whatever I'm complaining about or celebrating about the Red Wings. It is the weirdest start to the season in a long time.
Absolutely.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast, and we'll be back after to tell you about all of the prospects that are making things feel a lot better. We love a great deal as much as the next podcast, but we're not going to take a bunch of slap shots to the shins just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile told us it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, we called them on it. We gave a longtime Winged Wheel podcast listener a chance to try Mint Mobile, and the first things they told us were that activation and setup were super easy and how simple, effective, and user-friendly the Mint Mobile site is. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. There, you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number, along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. That's mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer, and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Welcome back. We had to jump back into this quickly because we were starting to fantasize about how nice bed would feel right now, and so this is risky business. And the good news is we actually have something exciting to talk to you about, which is the Red Wings that aren't on the Red Wings right now. The Red Wings' future is looking good. Let's start with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and you could pick anyone. You could pick Amadeus Lombardi, who's been on fire, getting first-line center duties and, showing himself well and having a great season so far. You can have Carter Gylander being solid in his AHL debut, 33 saves, posting a .917 save percentage in the win. You could have Sebastian Cossa, .954 save percentage, 1.54 goals against average in 5 starts so far for the Griffins.
Nate Danielson got his first goal.
Nate Danielson, first career pro hockey goal. Like there's the bad stuff. Carter Mazur is still going to be out for at least a couple weeks. It was reported Ville Husso left a game with an injury that was unrelated to his previous injuries, which we said this would be the worry with Husso, is that he would just be hurt. And this is a trend. That's rinse and repeat with what we heard last year. So you hope Ville's okay, but at the same time, tough for him. But on the positive, what a start for the Griffins as they are 6-1 to start their AHL season.
The fun thing about a Cossa Gylander pairing is that's 17 feet of goaltender.
And if you want a little extra on top, there's one still crushing it in Michigan State right now.
Yeah, but he's only 4 feet tall.
That's what I mean. I said a little bit on top.
It all averages out. But
they're going as Slender Man for Halloween.
They could do it.
They could.
Is that Slender Man in a Grand Rapids Griffins Winged Wheel podcast hat?
No, he's selling the Winged Wheel podcast hat.
Yeah, it's like a mix between the Slender Man and the Hat Man. Anyways.
But yeah, this is the exact start you wanted to see from Grand Rapids. Obviously, the wins are good. The record's good. But it's not like this team is being carried by AHL vets. We all remember how good Chris Terry was for the Griffins way back when. The reality of that situation was nobody cared how good Chris Terry was for Grand Rapids because he helped get wins, but he had no future with the Red Wings. Amadeus Lombardi turning into a dude is one hell of a development if it keeps going. We know Danielson's going to be good. We all knew Cossa was going to be good this year. Maybe not this, oh my God, this guy is elite type of good so far, but good. Amadeus Lombardi was playing a depth role in Grand Rapids last year. He impressed in Wings camp this year, but again, he was still an undersized forward asked to play center at the pro level. That was always going to be an uphill battle for him, especially when you remember he's one of the COVID kids coming out of the OHL where he missed a year of development and all that fun stuff, which, God, I don't ever want to talk about that again. But if he can carry a first line, this guy might be part of the Red Wings' future. I still don't think he's dynamic enough at his size to be a top 6 guy in Detroit. But if all of a sudden you have a guy who can fly around the ice at 1,000,000 miles an hour, make some plays, anchor your third line, and put up 30 to 45 points, that's phenomenal, especially for where they picked him.
You think about our conversation from earlier, which is what actually matters. We're going to get in the heat of the moment in this podcast. We post twice a week. We're talking about the games that are happening in Hockeytown. But what actually matters is what's in the pipeline and how are they being prepared for the NHL level. And what Dan Watson has been able to do, him and his staff with the Grand Rapids Griffins through, his season and a bit there. You talk about Rupe Koivunen as well, Sebastian Kossa's development. This is the stuff that actually matters. This is the nuts and bolts that builds the foundation for the future. So we're going to be talking about non-Griffins prospects in just a second here. But so far, Cossa, his start to the season, like you said, Brad, he is having the start to the season to the degree where you're like, oh, if he keeps doing this, you're talking about Cossa next season. I'm not scared. Like it's a long season. He has to sustain it, but he's playing well enough where you're like, oh no, he's going to get a look next season. Lombardi putting himself in the mix. Danielson getting going. You hope Mazur gets healthy. Like this is the stuff that matters.
You shave 40 points off Cossa's save percentage right now at the end of the season. We're talking about him in Detroit next year.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be carrying the load this year, especially they released Subban from the PTO. Husso's hurt. Like, who knows if or when Campbell will be back. This is Cossa's team. He is carrying the load for the season. I don't know how many games they expected him to play before the season started. He's probably going to end up playing more than that now with how things have shaken out. So if he's putting up a 9-15 or above in that workload, oh yeah, we're talking about Detroit next year. The fact he's putting up a 954, like I know it's only 6 games. A 954? That's insane.
Yeah, that's a dream start for him and the Griffins. Elsewhere, you have Axel Sandin Pellikka, 5 goals, 8 assists through 14 games, including that coast-to-coast highlight reel goal, splitting everyone over in the SHL. I think he had a goal and 2 assists that game.
Yes, and the one part about that goal that we can't leave out, I think that was in the final 3 minutes of a tied game.
Yes, against 2 juggernauts in the SHL. Like that game had big implications.
That is an all-time SHL goal. He's 1 point shy of a point per game as an undersized teenage defenseman in one of the best leagues in the world. Again, we just talked about what Cossa was doing is insane. I present to you insanity number 2.
The Red Wings have a massive, massive right shot D problem right now. I want to stop short of saying, oh yeah, Sandin Pellikka in that second pair right D slot next season, because there's a size thing, there's a physicality thing. How's he going to translate to North America? You need to let that one bake and rest for long enough before you bring it into the NHL, especially at that position. But it does make things hurt a little less when you're like, which one of Hall or Petrie or Evan or whoever else, you, the listener, is going to play on the right side for the Red Wings today and do a subpar job. It makes it a little easier knowing you at least have not just a okay option in the future, you have what could be a fantastic option in the future. And then overlooked, and I don't even think we've brought him up a lot. If you remember the Gibson trade, and it's kind of drowned out because the Wallman trade came directly after, but the Red Wings in the Gibson trade from Nashville, they got Jesse Kiiskinen and that second round pick. We don't talk about it, but Kiiskinen in Finland in SM Liiga is lighting it up. I love that gold helmet thing, man, for the team's leading scorer. Like if you're the top point getter, you get the gold helmet. He got warmed up through 18 games, 7 goals, 9 assists, and he is a highlight reel machine right now.
The thing that excites me about Kiiskinen especially, now, it's probably worth mentioning that Liga right now isn't what it was a bunch of years ago when like Barkov was there. So you do got to take the stats with a little bit of a grain of salt. But the fact he's flashing this talent is great because I think Kiiskinen has a solid chance as an energy guy in Detroit. Like I have this guy pegged as you throw him on your third, fourth, like energy line. And yeah, he might not put up a ton of points, but he's going to go out there and make a lot of things happen and be a good 200-foot player. And, you know, kind of that Luke Glendening, but with some skill type of player the Red Wings have always been looking for. I thought that might be a role he could sub into, but I didn't foresee this type of production coming out of him. So that's, again, an exciting development.
You add more talented, wingers who could potentially have flashes of offense to the pipeline. The Red Wings are still missing high-end offense on average throughout their system. And so, yeah, it's not a bad thing to add.
We've spent so many years in this rebuild looking at fourth lines going, yeah, they're okay defensively, but they get caved because there's not a shred of offense in them. And cool, they're defending their zone well. They've been stuck there for the last 13 minutes. It's not going well. If you can get a guy like Kiiskinen in that role where he's defending his zone well, and off the transition, he's creating chances, that's a fantastic dynamic.
Well, the Red Wings are really slow. They've been a slow team for probably the majority of the time we've been a podcast. So
they've been a slow team even when they were good. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. So injecting these guys with higher foot speed, Lombardi, Kiiskinen, that can change the dynamic and they can become more difficult to play against just by adding one thing.
Kasper skates well. Danielson skates really well. For big guys, Edvinsson and Seider skate really well. And again, it's probably the most obvious dynamic that the overall team is lacking because, yeah, you're right. They are painfully slow, and it's nice to see some solutions presenting themselves.
Okay, let's jump over to some quick NHL news before we get into overtime. Did you guys see Tkachuk and what he did in the crease against Varlamov?
Which one?
This one was Matthew. Against Varlamov, I think in like the span of 6 or 7 seconds, came in, bumped him, stole his stick, came around to the other side of the net, cross-checked the goalie, got in his crease, ran into him again, scored. All of this not called, and in his celebration, I think by this point Varlamov might have hit him back, but punched him in the head or something like that. It was essentially just like Tkachuk versus goalie speed run, all mashed into 7 seconds. Got the goal.
I love hockey right now.
Somehow no penalty, and I was reading it, and I was like, have I taken crazy pills? Because everyone's like, well, technically the goalie had time to reset, before the puck went in. He cross-checked the goalie. That's a penalty. Do people forget there's goalie interference is a penalty? It's a penalty. But you know what? My caveman take of the day is that I think he should get away with it because he was allowed to leave that crease with his teeth. If you're the Islanders, what? Truck the guy.
Oh, they don't have Cal Clutterbuck anymore.
The Red Wings broke the Islanders, my blog.
That game broke all of us. And Matthew Tkachuk doesn't care. He is the master of either engaging when he wants to or stepping away or pissing the other team off by turtling for the exact right amount. Like he is the league's current Marchand. But is this worse than peak Marchand in terms of like how much it drives you insane as the opponent?
It's got to be close.
Nah, he hasn't licked anybody yet.
It's on the bingo card for sure.
It would kill me. Like if that was the Red Wings, I would be losing my mind. Like that's a big punk test moment. And we've seen it. And part of his game is he does it in a way where he makes it hard for you to get your retribution. Friedge was talking a lot about like Boston was rattled because they couldn't get their retribution against the Panthers because they're just masters at both being an unreal hockey team and pissing you the hell off. And
well, that's the crux of it all. If you are the master of emotional manipulation but aren't a good team, teams are getting the retribution every single day. But Florida is both. They are an uber talented team and they get under everyone's skin.
Some other NHL news. I want to look around the league. San Jose being bad is not a surprise. And I get that they're the first, I think the back-to-back seasons losing 9 games, is it? Or something to that effect. But the teams that are surprising me, I thought Pittsburgh would have more than this. I didn't think they would be good, like a top-end team. But what's in store for the Penguins if this doesn't get better is a question, because there's the obvious Crosby context. There's the obvious, you're trying to pacify the Crosby got his 3 cups and he's going to stay there. But still, like it can't be this bad. Winnipeg being 8-0 is surprising everyone. What's Utah going to do with Dursey out long-term and Marino out long-term? There are some interesting storylines. Vancouver's got a wild card seed right now, but Pettersson is not playing like Pettersson should be now with that new contract. It's getting interesting.
Pittsburgh is so entertaining to me. Maybe the most entertaining team in the league to me right now, because you look at their analytics and the results, they score a lot and they generate a lot of offense and they somehow give up even more. And their starting goalie is currently in the minors. Like they are a dumpster fire. And you talk about with them, what are they going to do? They can't do anything. All their old guys are locked up for multiple years still. Jari's got a bunch of years left. Crosby just signed an extension. Malkin's got a bunch of years left. Letang, Carlson, they can't do a damn thing but ride this out.
And a lot of those guys are tied to legacy, right? You're not going to move on from Sidney Crosby if Sidney Crosby doesn't want it. And I would say the same thing for Letang and Malkin as well. They're stuck with the hand that they've dealt themselves, and they can only really move in the margins.
You know what? Because I know you're going to bring up Anderson on me later, and I'm going to get irritated. So I'm going to irritate you now. Erik Karlsson half retained in Detroit.
Brad.
Hey, he shoots right. It can't be worse.
He is a forward, Brad.
And we are 32nd in expected goals. I would rather run 4 forwards right now with the way this defense is constructed and our offense is running.
Rasmus Anderson has a year and a bit left at $4.55 million. He is a age 29, effectively age 30 UFA at expiry, and that changes things. But man, imagine this team with Rasmus Anderson on that second pair.
Oh, it'd be great. Do you know what it's going to cost to get him?
Who cares? It's late. I'm tired. Who cares? I care. For the record, I care.
Should have got Brandon Montour.
Because the only
hell yeah, we're on our shit this episode.
Yes.
The only actual argument I have in my case here for Karlsson over Anderson is the acquisition cost would actually be significantly less. And he would fill the exact role Sandin Pellikka would fill, so he could just be the stopgap.
You know what? Let's save this for a different episode. Let's take it now to overtime. It's getting a bit ridiculous here.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. The bonus content, the giveaways, the Discord, all of that and lots more. And you allow us to do things like support the Jamie Daniels Foundation through initiatives like Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA and at Van Andel Arena in partnership with the Red Wings and the Griffins. You allow us to produce other great content like Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. You allow us to have Max Bultman of the Athletic Detroit on the show as a contributor. All that. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. This comment from Dylan Larkin's Nana says, we have found a complimentary line in Kasper, Berggren, Tarasenko. Please don't break that up. So much fun. It is fun to see Kasper getting those kinds of teammates and getting different looks. Like people pigeonholed him as, oh, he's just going to be the identity line guy. But no, he's getting some offensive talent on his wings. Yeah, and it's giving the challenge of he's going to have to carry the defensive workload because Berggren's trying. I don't think Tarasenko is. But that's not why he's here, and it's fine. So, yeah, let him get his work in defensively and then flex his offensive creativity. I would say in the game today, actually, him and Berggren were way more noticeable in that line than Tarasenko. They were just making things happen. Joseph Barry says, how much of the Wings analytics is coaching and how much of it is roster construction? Because with that much talent, there's no way they're the worst team for expected goals for and expected goals for percentage. That much talent? Oof, look around the league. The Red Wings are not an above-average talent team, even at forward. I know Larkin, Raymond, Kane. I get it. There's good players there, but look around the league. CNOD says, I regret to inform you the Hall redemption arc has been canceled. I alluded to this earlier in the episode, and I think we were very careful about it, even as we were celebrating Hall. He'll have his time in the lineup, and he's going to... I think every single Red Wings defenseman that isn't a top 3 or 4 guy at that given moment... I think they're all replaceable. I think they all need to be cycled out consistently. Like Johansson stayed out and Lalonde said it's because we're on a win streak. And I get and largely agree with that, but this was such an atypical win streak where I was like, I think you need to constantly have those guys competing. I don't think you can be complacent, and I don't think you can be fooled into thinking Hall, Mata, Petrie, whoever is a good pairing. It is a bad defense. And beyond who you need to have up there, you need to constantly be moving them. And that's a thankless task for Derek Lalonde. And I will say that until I'm blue in the face. If Steve Yzerman has any ambition of putting this team into the playoffs, that defense is it's going to be a miracle in front of them if it happens. It genuinely is. And that is unfortunate because they were hoping Gustafsson would be an answer in the hole that was left by Gossesbear, but that's just not what's happened.
If those guys if any of them are good on a given night and help contribute to the win, then yes, they should stay in the lineup. But I think almost all the time, it should be on a case-by-case basis.
Next one from Darren Fix says, I've always said Joe Veleno is just like Pavel Datsyuk. I love that. I also love how Joe Veleno, that hit earlier in the game. I understand how it looked bad. I understand if you're a teammate, you want to defend it, but Perry challenging him and Veleno coming right off the bench and going, all right, dropping the gloves. That was
hell
yeah.
See.
Yeah, that was great.
That's got to be the only 90-on-90 fight in NHL history.
Dead Aim says, put yourself in the GM's shoes. What's a non-superstar defenseman you'd trade for to help this decor right now, and what would you be willing to give up? Well, Brad, as you say, Erik Karlsson's a superstar, so he's off the table. Rasmus Andersson, and what are you willing to give up?
Oh, Rasmus Andersson's playing like a superstar, so...
What actually, though, like, I'm making this joke. It is going to cost a lot, and I do care. Like, I'm not saying go and mortgage futures and send out first-round picks, but if you're the Red Wings and you have any sense that this guy would want to stay, then they have a glut of prospects.
They do. None that I'd be willing to part with that Calgary would want, and I don't think the Red Wings are in a position to move a first-round pick yet. I have a real tough time seeing this trade make sense, especially since he's not eligible for an extension yet, which would be arguably the biggest crux of it all.
It's tough. Gord Sinclair says, was I the only one thinking that Jack Hughes was trying to pull a Mark Scheifele, Jake Evans hit on Rasmussen, and then he realized that he could not take down the 6'6" redwood that is Rasmussen?
That was the thought in his head, I guarantee it. Rasmussen probably looked a lot smaller when Hughes was at the blue line and Rasmussen was picking up the puck.
It was one of those like perspective shift rooms that are at like Ripley's Believe It or Not museum. So he's probably like, why is this guy not? Oh my God, it's still getting bigger. Well,
this guy's gonna have his own super cut.
That's staying in, brother. If we are past 10 p.m., that is absolutely staying in. With that kind of phrasing, this is probably a great time to wrap up this episode of the Wing Wheel Podcast. Next episode is not going to come Wednesday. The Red Wings are playing the undefeated Winnipeg Jets that night, and so we are going to be with you by Thursday afternoon. You'll hear the episode. So Halloween Day, again, it's going to be a spooky episode, so the schedule is going to start to now change up a little bit, but we'll, of course, keep you updated. wingedwheelpodcast.com/podcast. We try to keep that schedule updated there, too. Thank you all so very much for tuning into this late night, off the rails, probably terrible edition of the Winged Wheel Podcast. To all of our listeners, new and old, we appreciate you hanging in with us, whether it's bright and early or late night like this. If you're new to the show, welcome. I'd love to say that we are more sane than this, but I don't know.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, it depends on the day. To all of our patrons, we could not do this show without you. Thank you so very much. And patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show. And if you want to support us, but Patreon's not for you, wherever you're getting your podcasts, subscribe, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, subscribe and leave a rating on any of those platforms, the thumbs up on YouTube. And honestly, tell a friend about the show, whether they're a Red Wings fan or a hockey fan who likes hockey content. It really does help us. To the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, thank you so much. And to all of our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Victor Zetterberg, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, #Wings Money on the Board, coming soon, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Best James Bond, Carl Brutinen-Analuski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Cider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, God Creatives, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam El-Kassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Mike Ludland, Mr. Kuzi, R.A., Riley Enright, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, Stephen Ordeleb, I believe a brand new name level supporter. That's what I appreciate about you. The New Jackson Five Holes, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Winged Boogie, Iserplan Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A.A. Ron, A.B., All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Chimkim Nuggets, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Golf Sucks, I feel you, brother, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Keenan O'Donohue, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hall, Lucas Raymond, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, brand new name level supporter, proud of you Winged Wheel Podcast boys, Ryan M, Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the One-Handed Wonder, the brand new name level supporter. Thank you all so very much for your support. The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you. Evan's already asleep.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.